Hello, this is Dr. Kathy Marshak. I'm going to do a little sound check here before we get started. I've got my AirPods in because they seem to be working better, but let's see if they're actually connected. Well, it says it is. If not, somebody will let me know pretty quickly. I don't have anybody in the room just yet, and we'll see how this goes. Make sure when you do join me, make sure you make a comment in the comment section so that I know you're here and you're ready to participate. And if you can hear me, please let me know. If you can't hear me, let me know that too, and I'll go ahead and try a different system. But I like using the AirPods because they're noise canceling and we keep all the extraneous sound out of the way. And I'll repeat myself a few times here until people are aware that I'm live. I started a smidgen early today. Our topic is context blindness in neurodiverse people. And I think that's a really, really important topic. And I'm going to announce the events that we're having this month so that you can hopefully join us if you're ready to join our meetup group. There's quite a bit that happens right here on our Facebook Lives every month, but it's only a once a month sort of open forum. And I hope that you will, um, you know, take the time to check out our meetup group. So I hate to just keep chattering with nobody in the room just yet. Uh, so we shall just see what happens here. Um, I have a lengthy description of what the topic is today that I'm going to be talking about. But I always tell people that I'm open to hearing from you about anything having to do with a neurodivergent life. So, what I mean by neurodivergent is a neurodiverse person, basically someone with Asperger's syndrome or high functioning autism. There's lots of different ways of describing somebody on the spectrum that has is bright and capable. Uh, the current language is neurodiverse. So if we have a neurodiverse person in a relationship with somebody, hi Amanda, can you hear me? By the way, I want to make sure you can actually hear me because I'm using my AirPods. Anyway, if you have a neurodiverse person and a neurotypical person in a relationship, I call that neurodivergent, if I get my terms straight, um, because it's there's lots of different terms that are being used these days, and I want to be consistent with the way we talk about it. Oh, good, you can hear me. Then I'm ready to go. I did start a little bit early, and I wanted to use my AirPods because they cancel some of the extraneous noise that causes the recording to be bad. And we are recording this so that you can listen to it or watch it later if you want to. You'll be able to find it on the Facebook page and it gets posted to my YouTube account. So, at any rate, I was just sort of bringing people up to date on our meetup group. Our meetup group is not part of Facebook necessarily. This Facebook forum is for anybody who wants to drop in and learn a little bit more about my work, about our group, and about participating with our members. We have um, quite a few members now, lots of activities going on. This is a meetup group for neurotypicals. Remember, if you have a neurodiverse person and a neurotypical in a relationship together, you have a neurodivergent relationship. So we talk about relationships in our meetup group. It's really important. We don't just talk about what is autism or what does it mean to be a neurotypical. We talk about the relationship because the real issue isn't so much a diagnosis as it is how these two very different thinking styles interact to produce conflicts, problems, um, you know, things that wouldn't be problematic for anybody else unless you're in a neurodivergent relationship. So I'm going to get started. I don't know how many people are here right now. Please let me know if you're here. Say hi. If you have a question, you can put it in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer live what your questions are, your comments. But I always go back after the recording, sometime that day or the next day, and also answer questions. So as I get into this topic of context blindness, this is a subject that was first developed by an author, Peter Vermeulen. He wrote a book entitled Autism as Context Blindness, and it just helps explain so many of the confusing messages that come through when you're in a neurodivergent relationship. Hi, Lynn. Good. I get people letting me know they're there. That's good because for whatever reason, it's not showing on my screen that people are in the room. So um, if you are interested in, by the way, if you're interested in joining our group, I put a link in the description on the page here, so you can click on the link and come to our meetup group. You can also read more about context blindness in my blog. I wrote, it's a couple of years old now, 2019 November blog, and I wrote about understanding context blindness. One more last little thing. We also have informal support groups run by our members. And if you want to participate in one of those groups, we have a group in the UK for that time zone. We have a group on the East Coast of the United States. We have a group in New Zealand time. We have other groups around too. There's a group being run in Seattle and a group in Southern California. They don't regularly post on our Meetup site, but we can certainly direct you in that direction. And the thing is, what I was going to say is that the UK group has had a couple of facilitators, and we need a new facilitator. So if you're in that time zone, you don't have to be in the UK, but you need to be in that time zone to facilitate the group if you want to help, host the group. You don't have to be a great public speaker. It's just to gather people together to talk about this lifestyle. Anyway, if you do, there's a link in the description today. You click on that link and say, hey, I'd be happy to host the meeting for our members. And then you'll get some help from Daniela and me, and we help you know how to do it. And it's not like we expect you to be, like I said, a public speaker or a great small group facilitator. Don't worry about that. Then lastly, I want you to know that there's another group in New Zealand run by Julie Rollins, and Julie probably will be on the call sometime today. She's pretty good about joining us on Facebook. Julie is terrific. She does two groups. One is for just for members who want to chat about perhaps today's Facebook Live, or who have attended one of our video calls, and she facilitates that in the New Zealand time zone. There's a few countries that can participate around that. And then Julie also runs a once a month new member group. And I think this is really important. She tries to host it at a time that's will work for people in the United States and Canada, even the UK and Australia, um, India. She tries to host it at a time that's fairly convenient for people. And it's to just talk about what it's like to first be discovering this stuff. Oh, Ravina, hi, nice to see you there. And Chris, yeah, we've got people showing up, which is great. Anyway, I really recommend, if you're brand new to our meetup group, that you join Julie's group, because she talks about, just living this lifestyle for many, many years, first not knowing what was going on, then finally discovering it, then being part of this group. She's been part of our group for a good 10 years. So learning about, making the adjustments and growing and changing and refining yourself, taking back your life and being true to yourself. She's very helpful. Okay, so if you're a member of our group, then you can participate in video conferences, and I host several of those during the month, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I also host, and that's a small group. That's a small group of maybe 8 to 10 people, and we talk about a topic. Um, and then once a month, I host a free to members teleconference. And as many people as want can join. We usually have anywhere from 50 to 100 people on a teleconference. It's recorded, so it's kind of a podcast. And then that recording is stored on our private website only for members. And you have well, I started this group back in 2013, so we have pretty much teleconferences forever, at least 10 years worth of teleconferences that you can go and listen to. Hi, SMA. This is great. Oh, Natalie, thank you. Oh, Lynn, oh my goodness, people are showing up. This is great. I did start a little bit early, but I haven't talked about the subject, so don't worry. Um, Context blindness. Let's so go ahead and get started with that. Um, Context blindness isn't that your autistic loved one is blind to the context, it's that they don't know how to respond to it. So for neurotypicals, we are interactive. We are looking at the contextual cues that are presented by the speaker or the person in your midst or just the environment. We're looking at all those various cues. Oh, Andra, there's another person there. See, so every time I see somebody, I'm so pleased because I can't really see you. All I can see is your little picture and your name, and I know you're there. And so for me, that's a contextual a clue that there's another person who's joined the meeting, and I want to welcome you. So as interactive speakers and thinkers, we are constantly assessing the environment for the contextual cues that bring us together. Okay, we're looking for the people first, the topic is second. So there's a range of contextual data even as you're looking at this video of me or this live right now. You know, you see the window behind me and there's a sign that says, whoops, I leaned the wrong way. I've got sunshine on a cloudy day because I live in the Northwest and I have lots of cloudy days, but I don't mind because I'm a native. So, and there's other things, you know, you might notice my earrings rattling there a little bit or something, but mostly we're we're paying attention to the human being who's speaking. And because we're neurotypicals, we assess which pieces of the context we should include in our assessment and which ones we should sort of put on hold and say, well, I'll come back to that later. And so we're context sensitive. So what happens is our empathy allows us to pick up which pieces of what Dr. Marshak is saying we should respond to, or which pieces are important to me. And I do want your questions. I want your comments because that helps me to know what's important to you, what I should respond to. We're context sensitive. And so the empathy triad consists of empathy, context, and conversation. We're constantly, the conversation is checking out, are we on task with that person? Context blindness means that your autistic family member doesn't know which pieces of the context are significant right now. They may be able to assess all this stuff. They know stuff's going on, but they may want to talk about the sign behind me. They may say something like, well, why are you blocking the sign? And I'll say, well, I don't mean to. It's just that it's not part of my talk today. So the context blind person doesn't know which pieces of the context to pay attention to because they're not assessing the environment for you. They're assessing the environment for the topic, the subject, the words. And you know how we don't mind if the words change because we're reading what the person is saying, not what the words are specifically. So my autistic daughter, when she was about 12 or 13, she says, Mom, why don't people say what they mean? Why don't people say what they mean? It was very interesting because when she said that, I thought, when she asked that question of me, I was like, okay, right. I get what you're talking about. And I said, well, people mean what they mean, but they don't often say it in specific words that you can understand. That's context blindness. She couldn't read between the lines. So, in the line with that theme of context blindness, I have four uh, uh, conferences that we're going to host. Um, and oh, darn it, I don't have the actual times on my list here. So you'll have to go to the calendar. I'm so sorry, but it will be for the month of June. And the first conference is a video conference, and I've entitled it When Love is a Noun. If you don't have context sensitivity, then you don't realize that love is loving. It's an energy for us neurotypicals. It's it's friendly. I happened to mention to one of my autistic clients that, oh, Susan, she says, sorry I'm late. You're not late. It's okay. You made it. I'm glad. I happened to mention to this autistic client of mine that it was very loving of him to offer friendship to a coworker. And he was startled, and he says, well, I'm not sure what you mean by loving because I don't want a, intimate relationship with him. And I said, oh, no. What I meant was it was kind. It's not wrong to offer kindness to somebody, to offer friendship. That's a type of love. But because he thinks of love as a noun, it's got one meaning for him, right? But for us, loving has various meanings, various contextual assessments from sexual or intimate love to just having a best friend that we just have to talk to every day, to watching two children enjoying ice cream cones together, and we just are filled with joy about that. That's a kind of a love too, isn't it? So that conference is talking about how to get around this context blindness where it's easier for people on the spectrum to interact with a process like love as if it's a thing, as if it belongs in a category, as opposed to it's interactive. The next conference that I'm offering is our monthly teleconference, Empathy Dysfunction Explains Autism Spectrum Disorder. Empathy Dysfunction explains it. Again, empathy dysfunction is this inability to pull from the context the pieces that are most important right now to this interaction. Right now. Empathy isn't empathy if you're not assessing how to make it a win-win for the people involved right now. It's okay later to go back, and I do that with my autistic clients. I say, at the very least, if you don't get what's going on in the moment, you can go back and say, oh, I think you were trying to tell me X, Y, and Z. I'm so sorry I didn't pick it up at first. That's okay. That's all right. Doesn't feel the same though. Empathy is in the moment when the person is noticing you, assessing you, wanting to be there for you, wanting to invite you into their reality. See, empathy is inviting the person into the way I think and feel and wanting to know what you think and feel, even if we disagree about the subject. So, empathy dysfunction is what I call, um, it includes context blindness. Empathy dysfunction is the whole range of inability to process what's going on. So they say the wrong thing at that moment. And even though, yes, it's true, there is a sign, I got to figure out which way I go. There is a sign behind me. It's not relevant. It's not important. It tells you something about what I think is quirky, and people think I'm quirky. So that's okay. Okay. The third conference for the month is another video conference. It's a small group conference and it's for members only. And it's called Theory of Mind is Vital for Our ASD-NT Relationship or our Neurodivergent Relationship. Remember, neurodivergence is what we used to call ASD-NT relationships, but it's a neurodivergent relationship is between somebody who's on the spectrum, neurodiverse, and somebody who's neurotypical. And if you're in a relationship, it feels like it's diverging all the time, neurodivergent. And you'll hear me use that term more and more. Over the years, these terms have changed, so hang in there. So, theory of mind, what that's about is if you have empathy dysfunction, if you are context blind, um, if you are transactional and you focus on the topic, not the person who's speaking, then what's going to happen is that you don't develop a sense that that other person has a mind that's different than yours. Now, you can ask somebody on the spectrum, isn't it true that SMA thinks differently than Susan, than Laura? And isn't it true that they live in different countries and one person's Laura's from Texas and SMA's from Amsterdam? Um, isn't it true they probably view things differently? The autistic person could say yes, but they don't use that information to process how to communicate with you. They don't use your language to communicate. They use their language. Oh, Julie, our ambassador, she arrived. I told them all about your group, Julie, so we can talk about that again in a moment. So theory of mind is we operate as if we're well aware that that people think differently, even if we speak the same language. In this group, for example, we have people from countries all over the world, and they speak English. You all speak English, or it'd be tough for you to be on this call with me. So, but do we speak the same English? Do we speak the um, the same innuendos? No, but if you've got empathy, if you use the empathy triad, empathy, context, and conversation, you can draw out what's going on with that other person. You'll see a look on their face and you'll go, that means something. And then you see it again and they keep using the same word and that expression and you go, I know what's going on with that person. So when you have a theory of mind, you can do that. They keep it separate. They don't use it. They don't use contextual cues to talk with you. They're listening for your words. Yeah, Arlena says her mind's blown. I hope so. But I want you to keep your brains intact. We got somebody from Australia. Hi, Kate. Okay, so then the next conference is the last one for the month of June. And it's a kind of a confusing one too. Is it really high functioning autism when I feel so bad? And I always have to explain this carefully. High functioning autism isn't high functioning in comparison to neurotypicals. That term is a clinical one, okay, something a psychologist might say. It's high functioning in comparison to other people on the autism spectrum. It's really important that you get this. So when we say, oh, we'll have a very high functioning, or he's at the high end of Asperger's, that doesn't really mean anything. It means, yes, that's a bright, capable person, but they don't use context sensitivity, empathy, um, theory of mind to communicate. So the reason you feel badly is that they miss the things that are important to me and you and anybody else they're talking. They're listening for the words, they're communicating what they are thinking and feeling, but they're not necessarily speaking to you. Okay, why do you feel bad? Well, we'll talk about that at the conference. Well, absolutely. Hi, Steve. Hey, it's been a while since you've been on a call. I'm glad you're here. Um, we feel badly because as neurotypicals, by the way, people on this call are both neurodiverse and neurotypical. It's open to anybody. So, but I think it's useful that we understand each other's worlds a little bit. So for neurotypicals, we are waiting for affirmation from the other person. We're waiting for the person to say, I'm noticing you. Hi, you're there. And of course, it's hard for me because I'm just getting printed words. I don't see a face, but I love it when people say, "Hi, I'm here." You know, that's at least saying something, right? It's noticing. So neurotypicals are not, we can function in the world without other people too, but when we really, really love to be affirmed that I exist, that you care about me, that you're noticing me, and we want to give that back to you, it just is rewarding. People on the spectrum consider that needy or neurotic, or they just don't even think about it. They just don't even notice that that's something of value. Although I think they can do better. I think they can learn that that's important, as well as neurotypicals can learn to not get your feelings hurt because they questioned your use of a word, term, whatever. So I want to make sure I've covered everything that I should today in general, and I'm looking to see if anybody's. Oh, Deb from Alaska, this is great. Gosh, we're getting from the four corners of the globe today. This is wonderful. I love it. Um, So the thing is that give, post your questions for me now. Go ahead and say something. I'm fine to answer it or talk about something related. One of the things I'm always telling my group, my small groups in Meetup, I'm saying it doesn't matter what the topic is. It's all about relating. And so even if we come at the topic from talking about mind blindness or context blindness or theory of mind or um, transactional versus interactional, um, what we're dealing with is the energy exchange that causes the problem. If neurotypicals are looking for a smile, a nod, yes, you get me, and the neurodiverse person is listening for words that make sense to them, those are two different messages. That's what causes the problem. So I don't get, nobody's saying anything. Am I so incredibly clear that there's no questions whatsoever? Maybe. I'm looking to see if there's anything in there. Oh, Marianne from Copenhagen. Nice. Nice to have you here. Um, well, I can talk a little bit more about this because we've got time. But honestly, if you've got a comment or a question or a gripe, sometimes say, how come you don't offer this at times that I can attend? Well, that's a good question. I'll make that question up. Remember, we record the teleconferences. Okay, so the teleconferences are located at my private site, um, that you have to be a Meetup member to go there, but you can listen to the last 10 years of teleconferences as many times as you want if you're a regular member of the group. You do have to be a paid member of the group. You get 30 days after you join, before you have to pay. You get 30 days to participate in everything. And then it's $25 a year. I try to keep it minimal, but we need to collect some fees to pay for all of the website and helpers and things like that. Aha, we got a question. Arlena says, hi, Kathy. My husband often says, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know what to do with it. That's transactional, right? He doesn't hear what you're saying. He hears your words. He hears your words. So he doesn't know what you're saying, doesn't know the deeper meaning. So what do you do about that? You can be upset about it, or you can say, okay, I need to be more transactional and help him know where this is going. So I'm always saying, give your transactional loved ones a headline. I'm going to talk about Sarah's third grade adjustment to her band class. And I'd like to talk to you about that. I'm going to give you some information, and then I want your help deciding if she should stay with band or not. You tell them in a nutshell, like a journalist would, what the article is about. Then you can talk about it. But remember, they're transactional, so they're waiting to hear anything that they can do. And how many of your autistic loved ones will say, just tell me what you want. Tell me what to do. And they're looking for an end point. Now that's emotionally distressing to us because we're not trying to get to an end point. We're trying to open up a discussion. For us, problem solving is opening things up and inviting the person in. That's problem solving. But for them, they're looking for what's the point? Where's this going? So I think we have to help them with that. We have to say, we can even say things like, I don't know where I'm going. I just need to talk for a while if you don't mind. Sometimes I just have to say, well, I know there's a point in there somewhere, but I don't know what it is. Will you just let me keep talking? But we recognize that they're not listening to us. They're listening to our words, and that's confusing. So Chris says, Chris Young, is there hope for them to learn how to have empathy or learn to identify context in order to improve the quality of conversation for the sake of the relationship? It's such a good question because, our neurotypical hearts are breaking because we want them to hear us. We want them to connect. That's what we mean by connecting. Doesn't mean agreeing. It just means noticing that I'm there and that I'm offering you a part of myself by inviting you into my reality. So, what we think about learning, I would say no, they're not going to learn empathy. But it doesn't mean they can't learn that there is something that we use that's empathy. Okay, that there's a type of energy that we use to connect. They can understand that we're interactional and we're opening up a conversation. Sometimes they might say, wait, I I don't want to ask this question because I don't think you want to tell me what to do. When they get that, it's kind of cute, right? So they can learn that there's more going on, but they might have a delay in processing it. That's alexithymia. You can look that one up. Alexithymia is this um, delay in processing what they feel, what you feel, having words for it. So they may have a delay and they may be able to figure it out later and write you an email that they understand. But conversation for us is the name of the game. We're interactive. And it's nothing to do with being an introvert or an extrovert. Introverts are interactive as well. We just might be more quiet about it. So when she or he, I can't tell from the picture, Chris, but the identification is, can this improve the quality of conversation for the sake of the relationship? The relationship is going to have to be based on another kind of love than that in the moment, interactive, empathic, in connecting stuff. It's really important that you understand the difference. The love can be there, but love's a noun, not a process for our transactional autistic loved ones. Callie, oh, there's lots of new comments. Okay. Callie says, I'd like to hear some about how to handle when our Aspie says we are being demanding or needy when we're just trying to connect. Well, first of all, we got to manage our own behavior. So yes, we are just trying to connect and we are trying to connect all the time. The problem is when we throw out a bid, John Gottman calls them bids, bids for connection. It's a bid to notice me. The other person's supposed to capture that bid and throw it back with a smile or say, yeah, tell me more about that. That's a connection. So we're throwing out a bid, and one of our members who's just getting her book published, Bronwyn, is has done some research on this, and she calls it prompt dependency. So what John Gottman calls a bid, Bronwyn calls a prompt. And please do find her book. I'm sorry, Bronwyn, I can't remember the name of it. If you're on the call, let us know. Maybe Kate knows what it's. I can't remember the name of it. But she's been working on this research for a long, long time. Prompt dependency is what we do is we escalate. We figure, oh, he or she didn't hear me, so I'll try again. I'll try another approach. I'll throw another bid out, another prompt. And pretty soon we're prompting for connection, and we're not getting it. And then we appear demanding, which in a way we kind of are. It's kind of pointless to demand interactive neurotypical response from a neurodiverse person, right? They can maybe do it one time out of 10 or one time out of 100, but not every time we send a bid. right? So this one neurodiverse spouse was complaining. She said, "Gosh, do I have to tell him where I'm going all the time? Just going out to the kitchen." And her neurotypical spouse, when she gets up in the middle of the TV program, he'll say something. "Oh, where are you going? Should I stop the show?" And she goes, "I'm just going to the kitchen." Real impatient with him. And he's just doing a touching base connecting thing. He's trying to be kind. Should I stop the show? You know, but she thinks that's needy. And I think the response is to say, um, first of all, get a hold of our own tendency to keep escalating our prompts. And secondly, to say, I just love you. I just love you. Don't let your neurodiverse loved one get away with accusing you of being needy when you are a loving being who's just throwing out a bid to connect. Susan says, I've noticed if I don't use his verbiage, he doesn't get what I'm trying to get across. Yes. Sadly, listening for the verbiage that's true, because if you have empathy, you're listening instead of a word you might use. You adjust. So that's what the empathy triad is, because empathy and context and conversation is adjusting our behavior so that the two of us stay on the same page, right? Even if you disagree, we still are looking for a way to stay connected. Unless, of course, it's a matter of your personal integrity, and then you don't want to be connected. So that transactional person needs the words. We need the intention. We're looking for intention. They're looking for words. It's really a big difference. Bonnie, hi. Bonnie says, how can we cope with feeling like we need more emotional support than we are receiving after all these years? Such a sweet comment. You're absolutely right. I know how I felt. I had an autistic mother, an autistic husband, and an autistic child. And so sandwiched for my entire life with people on the spectrum, I just felt like I was not just invisible, but unimportant. Uh, that the things that were important to me just weren't important to anybody else that I cared about. I loved people that I'm not sure they loved me. So when we need more emotional support than we are receiving, um, it's not good for us. It's not healthy. We're wired chemically for that kind of support. When I was 18 years old, I hid in my room. I wrapped up in blankets, put in earplugs. I was cold all the time. I was doing my homework. I ate a little bowl of crackers. I didn't come to dinner. That went on for 6 months until I said, well, I guess I'm not going to get any attention from my mother. I didn't know she was on the spectrum. And I went out and got a job. And I was so impressive on the job as an 18-year-old that they made me the night manager at the department store. I went, well, gosh, I might not be so dumb or ineffective or, a bad person. Maybe I got something going for me. So what we have to do is we do have to have a world in which we get that reinforcement for who we are, or we can't cope very well with an entire world where there's, um, you know, only that autistic way of looking at it. But I'd get my autistic partner into therapy if they'll go. They can learn to be more polite, more respectful, more honoring, like the woman who gets up and walks to the kitchen, and her husband, her neurotypical husband, says, "Where are you going, honey? Should I stop the show?" She could do better. She could say, "Oh, just going to the kitchen for a drink of water. Do you want anything?" She can learn to do that. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Hello from UK, now of Florida. Oh my gosh, you've traveled a lot, Jackie. And then Arlena has another comment. Is it if I express to him I need affection? Oh, right. She says we live like roommates. Yeah, I mean, he needs affection also. It's just that he can receive it, but he doesn't reciprocate it in a way that is meaningful to us. Probably, if he's on the spectrum, he doesn't know that even just a look, a smile, a tap on your shoulder feels amazing. Ravena, she says, my partner refuses diagnosis, so am I supposed to do all the work for both of us? Of course not. If you do all of the work, you're going to get burnt out and annoyed and hurt and angry and confused. That's not okay. Refusing the diagnosis seems like a big waste of time to me. Um, I'm always telling people that say, well, I don't need the diagnosis, so I can just accept that I'm on the spectrum. And I go, well, then you're not going to be willing to really look at how this interactive problem is going to destroy your relationship. It's important to have that diagnosis. I get it that many people are nervous about having a diagnosis that may follow them through life in some way that could be detrimental, but it's really important to say it's true, and I'm going to work with you on digging down underneath it. Does that make sense? So I don't want you doing all the work in the relationship, except that, I hate to say this, but neurotypicals are relationship oriented. Okay, because we're interactional, so we're looking for what's going on with the other person, aren't we? We're looking at how can I connect with them? How can I step into their reality and understand them and invite them into my own? And because we do that very well, um, we're we're able to understand how people on the autism spectrum think. And they have a hard time understanding how we think, but they can come to believe that what I'm telling them is true. So it's good to have a a therapist who gets what you're talking about. And people are saying yes, yes, yep. So they're agreeing. And yes, Louise, she says no conversation, so I can process. Right, that's how we process, is a conversation. Have you ever talked out loud to yourself as you go into the ladies' room? You're not with anybody, but you're processing something. So we we use conversation to open up a dialogue, and we take in another person's point of view, just like you're doing with my comments. You're taking them in and assessing how that fits for you or not. And if it doesn't fit for you, then you sort of hang it up on the pegboard over there and you leave it alone for a while until I might say something else and you go, oh, wait a minute, that does fit. And we bring it in and we have a conversation to grow, not just interpersonally, but personally. We wake up to things in ourselves that we wouldn't have known otherwise, which is why you can approach your neurodiverse loved one that way. When they say the darndest things, like when my daughter said, why don't people say what they mean, Mom? It was like, oh my gosh, she's reading the words, not the intention. She didn't know that there was something behind the words that that person was conveying by their nonverbals and just who they are personality wise. She didn't know that. And that was helpful to me to know that, right? Then actually, it was because of my daughter's diagnosis. She was 13 when she was diagnosed. Um, because I hunted for help for her for the longest time. After her diagnosis, then I realized that my mother was on the spectrum. I didn't know that all the years I was growing up. I started reflecting back on the misunderstandings I had with her and she was already deceased by then. And then after my mother, I realized that my spouse was on the spectrum. I had to wake up to these miscommunications, these misunderstandings that I was having. That's a personal revelation, right? It's not just interpersonal. Oh, yeah, Deborah was talking about again that phenomenon of, you try to be specific about what you want and that you still maybe get complaints from your neurodiverse spouse or partner. And then, or they say, yes, I'll do it, and then they don't do it. That's another that's another lesson about how they organize things. We store information interpersonally, right? How many of you have ever read a novel and then somebody made a movie of it? You go to the movie and it's just not like the novel. It's just not the same because we stored that memory of the book according to our notion of what the author meant. The movie producer and director and actors are presenting the story according to somebody else's notion of what it is. So they don't store information according to the fact that you're making the request, Deborah. They're storing your words, and since it didn't come from them, they're likely to forget it. That's why I make them write it down. Kate says, for non-Aspies, I like John Gottman's bids for attention, whereas Aspies don't seem to recognize this. Right. Absolutely. John Gottman is a psychologist in Seattle, and we respond to somebody's bid because it's fun for us to connect. And they're not noticing that just looking at the person and smiling at them is powerful. They don't know that. That's why a lot of times they just sit there with a very blank look, waiting for you to finish, waiting for you to finish, waiting for you to finish. And then when you're done, they might even say, are you done now? As if we're taking turns to talk, like kindergarten. Andra says, how do I ask my partner about autism without hurting his feelings whenever I ask him something, ask him about something he doesn't want to talk about or his emotions, he doesn't speak with me anymore? Well, yeah, that's a tough one. That people on the spectrum often withdraw when they're overwhelmed. They have most of them have extreme anxiety, absolutely extreme. Some of them, we don't know if it's, nature or nurture. After a lifetime of not being understood or understanding what's going on interpersonally, many of them have withdrawn and they have a little world that they function in and they think is true, and they just don't step out of that. Um, However, I have to tell you, my experience with people discovering that they're on the autism spectrum is it's a relief. It's absolutely a relief. They just go, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, this explains everything in my life. In fact, I had a post on one of my blogs, I think it was just last week, where a woman on the spectrum had been going to therapists for years and telling them that she was sure she was autistic. And the therapist kept saying, no, no, you're not. You're just very empathic. And she thought she was empathic because she was highly sensitive. She's sensitive, a kind, compassionate person. But she just knew that she wasn't reading interpersonally what was going on. And her partner tells her she's on the spectrum. Her grown children tell her that they think she's on the spectrum, but none of these therapists would. And then she read this blog, Empathy Asperger's Style, that I wrote a couple of years ago. And she said, explains everything. Now I know it's true. I don't have empathy, even though I'm kind and compassionate and sensitive, just not picking up what's going on interpersonally at that moment in time and responding to it. So, how do we deal with that sensitivity? I think you just reassure them that I love you enough to bring this to your attention. I think it's important. But if he shuts down again, of course, you're going to allow that. And then you're going to say another time, we'll talk again. Or you send a quick little note and say, didn't mean to upset you. I do think this is important and I think it would help. And you bring it up as many times as you kindly can. But if they absolutely won't accept it, maybe somebody else will get their attention. You know, it's not the end of the world to be diagnosed with autism. Oh, Christina, yeah, interesting. I tell my husband, quote, nice does not work with you. Okay. When we get really frustrated, sometimes we just yell at them and then they go do something. Then they finally, do what we ask them to do or cooperate. That's the prompt dependency. That's us trying and trying and throwing a bid and throwing another bid and throwing another prompt and just finally giving up and saying, the only thing he listens to is when I yell. And it's true, but we don't want to reinforce that. So by the time you're yelling, he has missed all of your prompts and he doesn't know that you've tried to politely engage him. He has no idea. He needs to know he's on the spectrum and that he's not picking up your cues. And then you can work with another method of communicating. It's not going to be the simple uh, prompts, if that makes sense. What Susan says, what's really tough is as I get older, I'm at a loss of words, so I'll get charades. So I'll get charades like to find a word. Charades like might be a typo. He gets so frustrated when he can't understand. How can I ask him not to get frustrated, but to be patient? Oh, I think that's okay. I think it's absolutely fine to say, I know it doesn't make sense to you yet. I know what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I miss the word. Um, if you could just give me a moment, I'll get to my point. But I have to say, us neurodiverse people are not direct. We think of ourselves direct. I always thought of myself as direct, and it's not true. We make a number of bids first for attention and affirmation before we talk, before we go to the point. We start interpersonally, and then we get transactional later. So many people on the spectrum say, you know, my spouse just wanders all over the place, or it's like there's all this fluff that she's throwing out. I don't know what she's talking about. One of my one of my clients referred to it as confetti. He says, I just wait for her confetti to fall to the ground so that and then we can talk about, what the real point is. So we think we're being direct. They get confused by that. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to assert yourself, Susan, and say, please wait. I'm still talking. I'm still getting to the point. I realize it's confusing on both sides. I tell my neurodiverse people to say that too. I say, give me a chance. I need to process. I need to think this through. I want to talk with you. I'm not quite sure what's going on. That's reasonable. I think anybody would be able to allow that if you ask for some time to think. Julie says, words versus intention. That is it in a nutshell. Yes, absolutely. We come from intention and we forget that we're setting it up with some bid language and some explanation about what I had for lunch and that, oh, by the way, I keep noticing my hair in the video because I finally got a COVID haircut. So happy that I was able to do that. Like, it doesn't look too bad today. So we're all about intention, right? And we wander off and talk about our haircut. But it's because we're sharing our world with that other person. That's a gift. If I share my world with you, that's a gift. I'm giving myself to you. And when you share back, you're giving yourself to me, and that's love. See, that's what we're waiting for. So we're not direct, except we're direct sort of about wanting to connect, aren't we? We want that first. Bonnie, she says, me too, sandwiched with people on the spectrum, only child was diagnosed. Many people on this call today maybe didn't even realize that you have been living with people on the spectrum all of your life. When I discovered my mother was on the spectrum, then I went, oh my gosh, her brothers are, my cousins are. Not everybody. There's neurotypicals among us, but I really do better understand my father drinking a little too much. I hate to say this. He didn't know what he was dealing with. He didn't understand my mother's transactional style. I didn't either. And we both just coped. So I want you to do better than cope. I want you to have a life. Jackie Leitman says, if they refuse to listen to the words, oh, that's a good point. I'm saying that they listen to the words instead of intention. And then when you are as specific as you can be and they still don't listen, it's because we still probably haven't said it in a way that helps them know what you're talking about. We tend to talk about not just specifics, we talk about feelings, we talk about ideas, we talk about a lot of different things. In fact, the opening scene of Social Network, a movie about 10 years ago, about the development of Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, the opening scene is just so classic. Here's this young man, Mark Zuckerberg, and his girlfriend meeting for dinner at a little pub in their college town. He's going to Harvard, she's going. Julie just keeps attacking everything she says as if she doesn't know what she's talking about because she's misusing the words or she's not listening to him or whatever. Finally, a couple of times in there, she says, "Hey, Mark, we're just talking. We're just talking." I like this phrase. We're just talking. Talking about what? We're just connecting is what she meant. I'm just trying to connect with you. We're just talking. That's not about anything in particular. So we don't know we do that. And he's listening to every word and going, that doesn't make any sense to me. So they're not refusing to listen to the words, but they don't get it. Then they might refuse. They might say, well, you don't make any sense, and they get up and leave the room. Yeah, Julie says, I so relate to being surrounded with Aspies, felt so lost and alone. Jackie says, if heyday, you can only ask one question a day. I'm not sure what that means, but when I'll come back to that when it makes sense to me. I'm not sure. Phrase it again for me, Jackie. I'll try. Steve says, I think I now understand why my AS spouse places such value on the little notes I leave for her. Words are very important to her. Yes, if you can put it in a text, like this one neurotypical husband was, they were running late and with his to a social event, and he asked his wife, "Would you mind calling Sue?" Whoever, what I'm making the name up. "Would you mind calling Sue and telling her we're going to be a little bit late, but we're on our way?" And so his Aspie wife picks up her cell phone and texts to this other person. And he says, no, I want you to call her. And I want her to hear your voice. See, so the person on the spectrum was using text because words are words. She didn't sense his wanting to provide a little extra comfort to their hostess that they didn't mean to be late. It felt disrespectful to him, right? Yeah, and it does feel like roommates after a while because, and this is another comment. Chicanas, hope I'm saying that right. Says we live like roommates. Um, yeah, what happens is because the love isn't reciprocated in the way that we feel it, in that neurotypical way, we just start functioning. We pick up the dry cleaning, we take the kids to an event, we don't talk anymore. And Louise says the same thing, pretty lonely at times since he can't connect or even see me. And it's true. They don't know where you're coming from. And then we start getting annoyed and hurt and pull back and it turns sad. Oh, good question, Jennifer. She says, is a diagnosis yes or no